Hey, really quick, let me know where you're watching from tonight if you're watching. Make sure, let me know what city, what state, what country if you're watching from. And if you do that, I'd appreciate that very much. Also, I want to make sure I do have sound tonight. So if anybody who's watching very quickly, if you can let me know that you can actually hear me, I appreciate it. But my pets, my dogs, my GSDs. Okay, I got thumbs up. Thank you very much. So what we're discussing is that in Luke's Gospel, the 21st chapter, right in the very verse like 24, uh, talks about how bad things will be. And in 25 said there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon. Going to be signs in the sun and the moon, the stars. The earth is going to do some weird things, whatever it may be, and that it'll be great distress. Okay, even the sea will be going crazy. The water will be going crazy. Everything will be going crazy in the last days. And so, when we start having earthquakes that are record earthquakes, that's obviously. Thank you, Sue, for watching. Thank you for letting me know where you're watching from. I appreciate that. Prayed for you and your family, your boys and your girl. Prayed for that. We do that. Uh, just let me know where you're watching from. I appreciate that. And so, in the last days, then there's going to be some craziness that going on. In fact, Matthew's Gospel, the 24th chapter, says there'll be nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Even children will turn against their parents against their children. There'll be pestilence and diseases that there's no cure for. And so, probably our monetary system, our monies will not probably somewhere within the system in the last days might fail. I mean, that's where the people talk about the mark of the beast and things like that, because going digital money instead of actual having paper money, all of those kind of things would be easy to rule somebody. And there's just a lot of craziness that will happen in the last days. We're not for sure what all that's going to be, but Jesus said that it would be so bad that in the last days that people's hearts will fail them. So it's important, and it's just naturally, when we look at it from God built this self-protective mechanism in our heart. There's those laws that we have from God's side. Then the secular world, the normal world, they have the laws of self-preservation. And actually, the laws of self-preservation came out in the 1800s. They've been around for a long time. The laws of self-preservation have been studied for a long time. For instance, I can remember going through jungle warfare training. I had joined the National Guard and ended up going through, I don't know, they were still preparing us to go to Vietnam, is what they were preparing us for, and a bunch of other things. And then from there, they took us from doing jungle warfare training, immediately went to Alaska for cold weather survival training. Went to Anchorage and then Fairbanks and then Fort Greely there in Alaska. And then go out there in the middle of nowheres and learn how to survive in the cold. We were your last great hope for the Russians coming across the north. We would have been the ones they threw the bodies at so they would die. Okay, that'd been probably primarily what our purpose would have been. But with learning how to cold weather survival training, well, it's called the threes. So, what I mean by the threes, like three, you got three things. Number one is you got 3 minutes for air. And I can remember doing underwater, trying to relax and not allow myself to be controlled, because what happens when you somehow or another you lose the ability to have oxygen or air, you've got to not fall and not get all out of just totally lose it. You got to be able to be calm enough to figure out what's going on. And so when you become alarmed, your mind can't reason. You can't reason. When you become fearful, you can't reason. Okay. You have those dreams of falling, somebody chasing, you can't do anything because of the fear. Fear that you're not allowed to reason. So trying to reason, you got 3 minutes for air, okay? And then you have 3 hours. Sorry, say 3 hours because I just talking about air, okay? That'd probably work in the South. I got 3 hours, okay, 3 hours to be able to find shelter. And the reason for that, even in the cold, extreme cold, you can carve out something in the snow or the ice to be able to survive. And I know that might sound crazy, survive in an ice cube. They do it. Eskimos have been doing it for a long time. And the same way as in the jungle, the same way in some island. The first thing that happens is you got to protect yourself. And like in extreme cold, what happens is you just go to sleep. And you die and you don't even know that you're dead. Okay, I mean, well, you're dead once you're dead because you're either going to go to heaven or hell, one or the other. So you would know it then. Or if in extreme heat you have a heat stroke, and it puts you out. And so anyway, you'll die. Okay, and that's simple. So you got about 3 hours to make some type of adjustment, and then you have 3 days for water. That's why they call it the threes. You got 3 days to find water. So if, for instance, if you land somewhere and you don't have a deal, that's the laws of self-preservation. Then you have 3 weeks to find food. So how does that pertain to us? Well, it pertains that there's a certain amount of fear and anxiety about having a place to live because we need a place to live. I was thinking of Michael Jordan's dad, who was raised in the South, and he was on his way back home up north. And when he'd go down south, a lot of times he didn't get a hotel. He'd just pull alongside the road, sleep for 10 minutes, and be awake. Well, he pulled offside the road, and a couple of kids killed him. Okay, well, having a place to stay is secure. The fear can just grip you. And I've had fear in my life. I remember we were camping up in the Gearhart Wilderness area. We were in the middle of nowheres, okay? And I had a state policeman out of nowheres came by our camp late at night. I was shocked that anybody knew that we were there. And he said, "No, I knew you guys were here. I seen you earlier today." I didn't know that he came by, but he had seen us somehow or another. And because what they do, evidently they must sneak around or do whatever. And so he said, the reason I stopped was, he said, not far from you, I stopped and I done a check on two guys. And he said, they checked out everything, checked out as far as I could check. But he said, I felt uneasy about them. And if I went home, I couldn't go home tonight. He lived in Lakeview, Oregon. So he said, I couldn't go home tonight without stopping and telling you to be careful about those guys. There's something about them that made me feel funny. And what he done is he transferred that funniness and that fear over to me. And it did cause me to have fear. And so Donna and them was sleeping in the tent. And so uh, she went to bed and went to tent. I went up away from the camp a little bit with a rifle and set up all night to watch. And the Lord help us if somebody would have came towards that camp, okay? Because he had me alarmed, okay? I probably would have given, even though I was born again, I probably would have given a warning shot or whatever. It was an automatic rifle. I probably gave a couple of rounds of warning shot. But I was waiting. I was watching, listening for sounds to make sure nobody would sneak up on me, okay? Because of my family. I wasn't doing it for me. I have my wife and two children and my pets, okay? And I was doing that because of fear. Fear will cause you to be totally controlled. And that's what happens when you have circumstances in your life. It causes you to be totally controlled. It ends up controlling you. When somebody's sick and they're dying, it totally controls you because of the fear. Fear will control you. I mean, fear is a menacing force. It's a spiritual force. So after that, we bought a trailer. And one more little additive to about the Gearhart Wilderness area. You can't take anything mechanical in the wilderness area. You can't take nothing, what you take, you bring back out. You can't take anything in the wilderness area. So we camped near the wilderness areas is what we done. But we had bought a little trailer, and I remember one night we had fished, and I used to illegally fish. We'd fish those creeks and catch so many fish, it was illegal. Okay, I just couldn't control myself. Donna Maria would be with me, and she was worse as I was as far as catching those mountain brook trout. And I remember I had caught this whole basket full of fish, and it was about 9 or something at night, and it had gotten dark. And I'm outside the little trailer, and sort of the moonlight, I was gutting the fish, going up the line, and I was cleaning the bloodline out and cleaning the fish up in their little creek. And I threw the guts over to the side. Was going planning on burying them the next morning to make sure my dog getting in them. And all of a sudden, my dog started eating the guts. But man, he was garbling them down like he's going to get sick or whatever. So I started hollering at Donna Marie. I said, "Hey, Donna, baby, come here, hollering. Come here." She come to her. "What do you want?" I said, "Get Peppy inside." And when I looked, I seen Peppy was standing right next to her. So I don't know, what sneaked up on me, but something sneaked up on me and was eating the guts right within a foot of me. Okay, something had to be pretty brazen to do that, So those animals can get pretty self-preservation on their part. My brother-in-law, Dick Lectrell, his brother, Wimpy, was out fishing and had a whole creel full of fish. And a bear began to chase him. So he'd throw a fish over here, and then the bear would go get the fish. And pretty soon the bear figured out, okay, he's throwing fish for me, okay? So he's chasing him all the way out of the woods until he finally made it to the truck. So in those areas, I carried a 357, and occasionally I carried a 44 Magnum. I had learned that 44 Magnum in Alaska. Okay, a 44 Magnum can stop a lot of things. The only problem is it's pretty heavy. 357 is pretty heavy, but it's not as heavy as that 44 Magnum. Self-preservation. Fear will drive you. Fear will control you. So when you have circumstances going on, and the way that they start is that you look at a circumstance, you look at something, just like a bird that looks like a snake, and it begins to be memorized, memorized by that snake, okay, and be totally controlled by fear. is that you start looking at circumstances. And it's real easy to look at circumstances. Maddie, good to see you. My sister Charlene, good to see you. And Sue, again, good to see you. I appreciate Prosperity Falls, Maddie. Thank you. And Charlene, my sister. Michael, good to see you. I love you very much. You and Elaine. And then Meyer, and Joanne and Shanae. Shanae. Shayana, thank you very much. I don't know why I have trouble with that name. I know you very well, so just forgive me. Okay, it's just I don't know if you know this or not, but I have trouble with certain vowels and certain things and certain syllables, and so I work on that. I'm still working on that. Okay, so what happens is that you start to focus on something, and when you do, you start to complain about it. And so when you look like in Numbers, the 11th chapter, I believe it's verse 26, somewhere through there, the children of Israel, I think it's actually the 11th chapter, and it might even be verse 4 through 6, somewhere's in the Numbers 11th chapter, okay? They started complaining about the food they were eating. They were just the food they were eating, and God got upset with them. They started saying, listen, we want meat, we want garlic, we want leeks, we want, the fish. We got to have meat, and we got to have bread. We wanted bread, okay? We want bread, we want bread, we want fish. And it upset God because they were complaining about the food. God got upset because they were complaining about the food. Now God sent a bunch of quail to him. I mean, he just flushed them with quail. He must have been aggravated. He must have threw the way it talked about the way the quail came. It might have been, it's sort of like God just flushed them with all this quail. Okay, okay, there you are. Dumped a bunch of quail on them. Okay, there you go. You little twerp shoes. There's your bunch of quail. Okay, and dumped the quail on and made them fix it themselves. They probably were tickled. Okay, probably excited to have meat. They had been eating the kind of food that was healthy for them because God was giving them food from heaven. That food had to be good. That food had no, you know, sugar spikes and sugar lows or whatever. It was nutritional, probably totally the best food you could probably eat. But they started complaining about it and it upset God because they were complaining. So what we find ourselves doing is when you start to complain, it means you haven't trusted God for something. You start complaining about what one of your children are doing, or what your parents are doing, or what your neighbors are doing, or what they're doing at work. You start complaining about it. And the reason you're complaining is because you haven't taken it to prayer. That's why Philippians, the fourth chapter, starts in verse 6, talks about in everything, go to God with thanksgiving. Not that you're being thankful for the problem, but you're being thankful that God has the problem under control. You're thanking God for the solution instead of focusing on somebody going to come into the camp in the middle of the night, or instead of focusing on the sun going to do something weird, instead of focusing on what's happening around the world. And it's really hard not to, I mean, I understand this because of the training. It's really hard not to focus when you can't get air, okay? It's really hard not to focus if you don't have water. It's really hard not, it's really hard not to. I mean, that's what you want to do. The natural laws of self-preservation causes you to focus on the things that you need. I mean, you'll focus right on that. And so then you start focusing about the issues, when you don't have money for rent, you don't have food, it's hard not to focus on that. But what we have found is that, and sometime I have been there where I just wanted to tell somebody just how bad it was. I just want them to know how bad it was. I mean, being pushed by the devil to just tell somebody, listen, this is bad. This is bad. I mean, it's really bad. And I understand that. It's really hard then, and the reason that I had done that is because I had not switched over, began to trust God. When you begin to trust God, you begin to be thankful, and that's what he says, go to everything in God in prayer, and then let your thankfulness begin to start. Start thanking God for the food. Start thanking God for the house. I was listening to a series from a man that has passed away. He's out of Oklahoma, and he was talking about that he was teaching on the radio late one night and was talking about you believe you receive it when you pray. You believe you receive when you pray, and you call those things which be not as though they are. And he said, I can tell you how come your car didn't sell. It's because you didn't consider it sold. It has to be sold. Just like you got to consider that you receive from God that your children are saved. Not trying to be saved, not wanting to be saved. You got to start thinking. And he said, back in those days, I don't know if you remember this, we used to travel, we'd travel through the mountains here in Oregon, and radio stations would come and go, and you'd find another one come and go. He said some old boy was just complaining to God driving down the road, God, How come my car? I'm believing you for it to be sold because I need that money. And all of a sudden, he came on the radio, had tuned right in for a few minutes, and said, "I can tell you how come your car didn't sell. It's because you haven't considered it sold." And then he went back off the radio, and the guy's still trying to find it. Like God answered his prayer right there, because you have to be thankful and consider it done. You start saying, "Listen, I'm not trying to get my rent paid. I'm not trying to get finances to succeed. I'm not trying to get my healing. It is done. God, I'm thanking you for it." And you start to be thankful. There's something about thankfulness will take you in the very presence of God. But I can tell you, complaining will get you in trouble with Him. And you don't mean to complain. You're just talking about the facts, but the facts can get you in trouble. The facts, there's a difference between facts and truth. So in God, you have to start saying, God, I'm not going to look at the earth because He said the earth is going to do some strange things. And it's hard not to focus when everybody's talking about how bad the earth is doing. He says in the last days that men's hearts will fail them because of how bad things will be. Nation against nation. Matthew 24, verse 7, starts in verse 7. Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. These are the signs of the end time. Now, I know we have a little bit of peace right now, but you're guaranteed by the word of God that that's not going to last. God is one that said in the last days it'll be nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, parents against children, children against each other, siblings fighting. Everybody will be against everybody. That there'll be pestilence. That means diseases that there's no cures for. And pestilence and all the different things on that, food shortages, all the things that we've never experienced here in America. You know, we're blessed. We're beyond blessed. If you've got $10 in your pocket right now, you've got more money than 80% of the world has. More than 80% of the world has, okay? The rest of the world is nowhere near what we have here in America. I mean, it's an amazing how much and how financially blessed we are financially considered what the rest of the world is doing. You got $10, you got more than 80% of the people around the world. You know, you got all these starving children in China. Remember that a parents eat your food. Okay, there's people starving somewhere. Well, they're not starving now, many of those nations. But many nations, they do starve. Many nations, there's people who have lacks. And this is why it's so important to, start taking a look around the world about how bad things can be. But again, it's really hard not to focus on that because it's just like me being under the water, submerged underwater. You know, I could have came up anytime I wanted to. I'm not going to jerk that little rope to get up before my 3 minutes are up, okay? But I will tell you, I was alarmed, okay? I mean, I was like, I totally alarmed. I couldn't be still. You had to learn to totally relax. Okay, that was difficult to do. So what I'm saying to you is when you have that kind of pressure, Sarah, good to see you, and Regina, good to see you, Marianne and Brandy. I love you guys very much. And as I told you, we go through. You get prayers early in the morning, okay? If you should be seeing a difference. But I need you to also do the same thing. Start to be thankful for what God has done in your life. And I started being thankful for my healing when I was still having bad physical symptoms. When I had no money whatsoever, I started thanking God that I was rich. He became poor that I might be made rich, out of 1 Corinthians 8:9. He said he became poor that I might be made rich. And I started running around. I can remember walking down the street thanking God that I was rich. I did not feel rich. I couldn't pay the bills. But I'm being thankful to God that he became poor that I might be made rich. Now, I know that might sound crazy to you, but when you don't have any money and you're not capable of paying your bills, and our bills were stacking up, and we were living off of a credit card eating, you can't do that very long because they shut the credit card off on you. Well, thank God our credit record was never harmed or hurt. I think you've heard me say this. That Donna and I both, she beat me by one number. I don't know how she ever done that. Her number, we actually had different credit statuses, and hers was one number above mine, and we both record high for in the state of Oregon for this one largest credit union in the state of Oregon. Our credit rating was the highest that they had ever seen. Okay, how do you do that? You pay your bills and then you spend it in there. When you're doing business, you're doing all these businesses, you're doing all this money. Well, I didn't start there, but what I did start, I began to be thankful because God said that he became poor that I might be made rich. Well, I'm not going to call him a liar. I've had Jesus appear to me, and I'm going to tell you right now, the last thing you want to do is stand there and look him in the eye and say, I don't think it's working. I mean, I've only been rebuked one time. I've mainly rebuked one time. That was in the sawmill. And that was because I was telling the devil how bad one of my brothers was. I said, the devil's really got him. And that's when I knew I grieved the Holy Spirit. I knew I grieved God. I said, you know, the devil's really got him, oh. I mean, I'm having a hard time with this, God. The devil's really got a hold of my brother, and I'm having a real hard time believing you for his salvation. And instantly, I knew then that that I had grieved God, and I fell on the floor. I run over where nobody could see me in the sawmill, fell on that old cement floor, and said, "I don't know what I've said to upset you, but I've upset you." And then you heard me say it felt like sounded like a and the sawmill's loud. It's already loud in there. It's loud. You have to wear ear protection. I wore an inner ear protection and ear muffs like this for the protection of the hearing because the noise you couldn't it hurt your ears. It damaged your ears. And but I could hear a freight train coming through that sawmill. It was God's voice said, "I am bigger than the devil." And what the devil had done is convinced me that he was bigger than God. God says, "You think I can't control that? You think I can't handle that if you trust me? You don't think I can take care of him? You don't think I can do this?" No, God, I know you can do this. You got this, okay? You got this, God. I got up from there and repented. And I immediately said, "You lying devil, you convinced me, you stupid devil. I done everything but cuss the devil out, okay?" That's what I felt like doing. I felt like cussing him out because he had upset me so bad that I realized he had me fully persuaded that he was in charge. He had it under control. He had my brother under control. Once God convinced me that he was under control, that God had him, then I was able to thank God and begin to worship God that God had him under control. So if you've got somebody doing what's wrong, you've got to get over there to a place where you begin to be thankful to God that God is bigger than the devil, God's bigger than drugs, God's bigger than, any kind of craziness that they might be in. Because when God is bigger, God can handle your little twerps or your little twerp. He can handle them, but you've got to be able to believe that. And so when I'm trusting God for the salvation of your brothers or your family, I'm doing it with the persuasion that if I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, my household shall be saved. And all of Donna's family is part of my household. All of my family by blood or by marriage, it doesn't matter what it is, I accept them being saved. And I'm very thankful for that. God is bigger than any religious devil because sometimes religion is more powerful in people than drugs because they get obsessed with it. Just like I'm not going through oppression, obsession, and possession part, but they can get obsessed with something, but God is bigger than doing that. Okay, I appreciate you being with me. I just want you to focus on God, begin to, focus on his promise. If he tells you that you've got something good going on, if he tells you that something is good, then trust God on that. Trust God. Look for his scripture to say, God, I'm going to begin to say and that it's done, that they're saved, they're born again, that I'm prosperous. I said when I was prosperous, walking down the street in Clemmer Falls on Homedale Drive, Homedale Road there, going for a walk. And during those days, I was actually running, probably more like jogging. And I'm being thankful to God that I'm rich. And I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. We had no money. We couldn't buy fuel. We couldn't buy toilet paper. We couldn't buy food. We couldn't buy a lot of things. But what I did do, God began to turn that around for me because I began to trust my God that he's not a liar. And so that's what I figured out. He is not a liar. God is not a liar. He got it turned around for me, and I'm very thankful for that. So don't focus on the earth. Don't focus on the bad things. Focus on the promises of God. That'll bring change to you. Hey, I appreciate being with you. Thank you very much. Make sure you let me know where you're from. And if you haven't yet, go switch on over to YouTube because I'm going to start doing YouTube. If you've been watching YouTube, you see me do a couple minutes. That's me testing YouTube out, okay? So you're going to see me do. I had to make sure that the equipment I could do YouTube live, because Facebook only keeps these for about 30 days and then they kick them off. They used to keep them for a long time, but not anymore. I had programs on there for 8 or 9 years, but they're gone. YouTube will keep them for a long time. So that's why I'm doing the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, and if you hit the little button under YouTube, it'll let you know when I've actually coming on with the program. And that'll let you know first that I'm doing. That way I can keep you informed. You know, Mighty good to see you. Thank you for being here tonight. And, thank you very much. Thank you, guys.